I'm Kira Phillips. Glad you're streaming with us. We do begin with breaking news. The Supreme Court has temporarily extended access to the abortion pill, mifepristone, until Friday, while justices consider whether to allow restrictions from lower courts to take effect. Joining me now, senior national correspondent and my co-anchor Terry Moran, also senior congressional correspondent Rachel Scott, ABC News senior national policy correspondent Ann Flaherty, and our senior Washington correspondent Devin Dwyer. Let's start with you and tell us what this suggests.
Well, it's simply to buy a little more time. Kira, the Supreme Court had set a self-imposed deadline of midnight tonight to decide whether or not to stay those lower court rulings, which would impose new restrictions on the abortion pill after 23 years in circulation and use in this country. They've decided to give themselves 2 more days. Justice Samuel Alito, in a very simple one-page order, said that the stay, what's called an administrative stay, is hereby extended until Friday night at midnight. So what does all of this mean? Well, it likely means that the Supreme Court, by this point, has decided in private what way they want to go on this, what sort of a stay or not they want to put on those lower court decisions, and they're now furiously writing dissents. And there could be potentially, if they took a middle ground here, dissents on both sides of this decision, simply on the stays. We don't know. But that is going on, and what this suggests to me is that they simply are buying some time to put their thoughts on paper, Kira.
So, Terry, why do you think they're buying a little more time here?
Well, I think the stakes are so high, Kira, right? Last year, they overturned Roe versus Wade, and in that ruling, you could tell that the 6 justices who voted to overturn Roe versus Wade, thought they were freeing the court from the moral and political tangle of abortion. That's not the case, because those people who want to restrict abortion totally around the country, including some federal judges, it's pretty clear, are pushing the boundaries of what right now is the law, including the FDA's approval of the abortion pill. Back in 2000, they approved it. They reviewed it in 2016 after 16 years of safety protocols and of looking at how the drug was being used. And they approved it again in 2020 and 2022. And all of those times, this has been used by millions. 5.8 million women have used mifepristone. And so what their court is now dealing with are essentially judges and litigants who want to push the boundaries farther away from women's access to abortion, a completely national pro-life regime. And that's what they're looking at. I think they know the stakes are that high. Whoever is on the winning side in the Supreme Court is going to get, as Devin says, fierce dissents from the other side. And that's why I think Devin's right. It's taking 2 more days.
So, Rachel, I'm sure there's political fallout on the Hill once this was announced.
Always is, Kira. I could tell you that no matter what side of the debate you're on right now, this is not exactly the clarity I think Democrats or Republicans were looking for on either side of this. But just moments ago, the Senate Judiciary Committee announced on Twitter that they are going to hold a hearing on what they are calling the devastating fallout since the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. This would be the first House or Senate hearing that Congress has actually held on reproductive rights. So you see Democrats here, especially as we are inching closer to 2024 politically, trying to put this issue front and center, calling out Republicans and their push to further restrict access to abortion. For Republicans, this is sort of a tricky situation here. Yes, you have a growing number of Republicans here on Capitol Hill who want to see more restrictive abortion laws be passed across the country. They even want to see the Supreme Court back some of these limitations and restrictions that we've been talking about here. But on the other hand, they saw what happened in the midterm election. They saw the way that Democrats used this issue to galvanize their voters in November. And not only that, you even had the conservative state of Kansas. When abortion was on the ballot, the conservative state of Kansas overwhelmingly voted to protect access to abortion. So we are seeing some of these Republican candidates for president, prospective Republican candidates for president, sort of walk this fine line here. Bottom line, as you know this is a deeply, deeply divisive issue. As Democrats are racing to protect access to abortion, you have Republicans that are clearly looking to restrict it.
And how's it playing out with women looking to the pill?
Yeah, Carrie, I don't think we talk about this enough, but there's actually the debate in Washington, and then there's actually how it's playing out in the states. I've talked with abortion providers who say they are stockpiling this medication in addition to the 5 states that we've seen buy up these abortion medications, just in case the Supreme Court pulls that access. So, you know, certainly something that abortion rights advocates are saying is that, you know, Washington and the Supreme Court can do whatever it wants, but these pills are widely available throughout the United States, and women are buying them. And states believe that they will face very little legal liability in handing out this drug to women, even if the court acts to restrict it. Now, another piece of this that I think is interesting to note is that you have pharmaceutical companies overseas, these pharmacies in India, China, Vietnam, for starters, that are willing to sell this pill to women in Texas and other states where abortion is illegal. So we do know that these pills are being provided at a markup of a price. They cost maybe only $15 per pill, and they're being provided to women at $150. Of course, the FDA warns people not to buy medication from overseas, but we've seen it with other drugs like insulin, that people have gone to these overseas pharmacies to get access to drugs. So, you know, at least 14 states, as you'll see on the map there, have ceased nearly all abortions. But I don't think that that's necessarily the on-the-ground reality as this plays out. Women say that, you know, if they want an abortion, that they will find access to it.
So, Devin, next move for the court. What are the options on the table?
We've been talking about it all afternoon, Kira. There are numerous options the justices could take in dealing with this. But again, it kind of boils down to 4 choices that they're taking a look at here, all with respect to that decision in the lower court that would put these new restrictions back in place. First, they could deny the government's request to stay those restrictions. That would allow them to take effect. It would be dramatic upheaval in the regulatory process and potentially, according to the government, harm women in these clinics and the pharmaceutical companies. They could also grant the request for a stay. They could put all of this on hold for a longer term as this continues to play out in the lower courts. That would be the best case scenario for the government and the drug maker. And then there's sort of a third course they could take, which is sort of something of a middle ground. A lot of different ways they could go there because there are so many facets to this case and to that lower court decision, taking issues with various layers of FDA approval over the years, not just the initial approval in 2000, but things like approving the drug to be distributed by mail. Maybe the justices are going to carve out some sort of stay that deals with that piece, for example. And then we'll be watching to see, Kira, sort of a fourth option is, will the court take this up? Will they hold arguments? Perhaps as soon as next month. Will this be debated in a public forum? Will they write an opinion by the end of June? That's possible as well. We'll just see. Terry talked about the court wanting to perhaps stay out of this. We'll see if their appetite is to get right back into it and go that way. So that's sort of the universe of choices, and we'll find out, it sounds like, on Friday which way they'll go.
Well, it's also playing out as we enter into 2024, Terry. I mean, the politics of it all, it's already on platforms. I mean, this and abortion in general.
Absolutely, Kira. This is going to be one of the central issues of the presidential election. It was in the midterms, and as Rachel pointed out, it was surprising to Republicans, I think, just how fierce the determination of those women and others who are pro-choice, in the language of the movement, are at the ballot box. They are getting out. They are making a difference in elections. And in some ways, the Republican Party is in a bind. It's like, be careful what you wish for. They're kind of like the dog that caught the car, because this energy that you see on the other side, on the anti-abortion rights, pro-life side, to get to the absolute maximum restrictions on abortion, to ban it if possible, is a kind of irresistible ratchet in the Republican Party. It is very difficult in the Republican Party if someone says, I am so strong on limiting abortion that I believe we should ban it nationally. It's difficult for candidates to stand against that because the base is moving in that direction. And I would add, finally, so are the judges. For a long time, the Supreme Court justices took the position, even if they were wanting to overturn Roe versus Wade, that what they were for was democratic decision-making. Now, in Texas in particular, but in other cases, you see the judges essentially mouthing and writing the talking points of the anti-abortion rights movement. They have become activists on the bench on this issue, and that is a political problem for the Republican Party.
Well, and that brings in, that's a perfect segue, Rachel, to Ron DeSantis, who's gambling on the issue of abortion.
Yes, and just days ago, he signed a 6-week abortion bill into law. It's not yet in effect. It's still going through some legal challenges there in Florida. But I just came back from the Sunshine State where I met with abortion providers who talked about how they feared what this would mean for women, especially in nearby states. Because when you look at the map of the 14 states that have stopped nearly all abortion services, you will see that you have people traveling hundreds of miles just to get to states like Florida, where previously there was a 15-week abortion ban in place. And now women in Florida can't even get access to abortion services in their own state. They're having to travel elsewhere. It's created sort of this domino effect. And as you see on the screen here, this sort of abortion desert that is happening in the South. The landscape has just dramatically changed here. One thing that was notable, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis did sign that bill sort of quietly in the middle of the night, it appeared, because his team sent out a tweet noting the public that he had signed the bill around 11 p.m. It wasn't exactly a huge press conference or press event that he had done previously. And again, it's a sign of just how tricky this is for Republicans as they're entering the 2024 presidential campaign cycle.
Rachel, Terry, and Devin, thank you all so much.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.